I call to order the February 25th, 2026 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is a roll call.
Ed Butts.
Present.
Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Brad Halberg.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Tim Vanderplatz.
Present.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the previous meeting minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 28th, 2026 ABZA public hearing as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business.
Our three cases are ready to be heard.
All right. Thank you. I'll go ahead and take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, staff reports and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from checkpoint agencies.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to briefly describe our meeting procedures. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We will ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we will ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your argument will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. With that in mind, we'll hear the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2220 Walmart Real Estate Business Trust. Petitioner and owner, represented by Heather Werner of Signcrafter Incorporated, requests the following variances to install signage for an accessory gasoline service station. 1, to increase the height of a freestanding sign from the maximum allowed 24 feet to 30 feet, UZO 4-8-6. Number 2, to increase the area for a freestanding sign from the maximum allowed 100 square feet to 152 square feet, UZO 4-8-6. Number 3, to increase the total sign area on the sign lot from the maximum allowed 240 square feet to 686 square feet, UZO 4-8-5. The GB zoned property is located at the southwest corner of Cumberland Avenue and Sagamore Parkway West, addressed 2801 Northwestern Avenue, West Lafayette, Wabash 12, Northeast 23-5.
I second.
Thank you. A motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please. Nathan?
Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. Welcome back to the West Lafayette Walmart. We were here in March of last year when you heard the parking variance. That was, I believe, the third, if not the fourth parking variance on this site. The site has a pretty extensive variance or BZA history since the facility was built in 1994. So here's the aerial map. We've got Odyssey Apartments that's being constructed to the south, the Celery Bog there to the west, Sagamore Commons commercial subdivision to the north there. So the sign variance, although some of these variances apply to the entire property, the total signage, the only changes that we're seeing on this property are for that gas station. So although the entire signage area that includes existing and proposed signage is included in the variance request, there's not going to be any changes to the building signage of the supercenter that are involved with this. Closer aerial. We've got some site photos. The gas station, I'll go to the site plan here first, maybe that'll be helpful. Similar site plan to what you saw last year. Up there at the northeast corner is where the gas station is being proposed. Right now, there's an existing pylon sign in that general area. Right here. There will be a new, so this pylon sign, the proposal is to remove that pylon sign and install a new one that'll be in the same general location. I don't think it'll be in the exact same location. And basically the difference is this is the new design for the proposed pylon sign. It'll be significantly larger in terms of height, but also in terms of area. So the actual Walmart portion will be larger, and then they'll have the digital price reader there as well. Just so that things are clear, the total proposed signage is the 152 square feet of the freestanding sign, which is roughly 60 square feet larger than the current freestanding pole sign. And then the fuel station signage, which will be about 144.26 square feet. And then the rest is the building signage. There is kind of a complicated history of how the current signage on the site got there. It exceeds what's currently allowed by the UZO, but part of the reason for that is the building was built under our previous zoning ordinance, which allowed more signage, basically. So you'll see more signage on site than what's allowed, and especially now that the gas station is being proposed, that actually reduces the total sign allotment. So what's being proposed is about 3 times roughly what's currently allowed with this site plan. So with all of that covered, I'll just kind of quickly go through staff's assessment of the tests here. Staff is recommending denial on all 3 of these variance requests, but I'll go through them one by one just to be clear why. We do not believe, staff does not believe that installing the signage would be injurious to the public health, safety, or welfare of the general community. Signage of this type is common in the area. It's a commercial corridor. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially or adverse manner. Again, this is a commercial area. Signage like this is common. The terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common, and the argument for that, as you'll see from these images here, there's a pretty significant berm on the property from Sagamore Parkway. It's 8 to 10 feet probably in height, and it does inhibit visibility. I took some photos from the path, the walking path along Sagamore Parkway there, and especially for the freestanding sign, it sits lower in the air than others compared because it's the site is kind of sunken in. So we believe that this is a situation that is uncommon for surrounding properties and properties in the GB zone. Strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will not result in an unusual or an unnecessary hardship. And this is the test that we believe it did not pass, and which is why we're recommending denial on all of them. The signage is not required for the site to be used as a GB site can be used. The signage is not necessary for Walmart to continue to function, basically. So with that, staff is recommending denial on all 3 variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Heather Werner, 9213 Liberty Court, Evansville, Indiana. I'm here representing Walmart for the fuel station expansion, as Nathan did state. Walmart is proposing the additional height for the freestanding sign because of visibility. We know driving through here, you can hardly see the sign as it is driving through here, especially with other businesses in the area. Walmart would request the higher to see the sign plus see the fuel price readers for visibility for them to bring in the added business that they're wanting to add, bringing in a fuel station. Driving through here, I didn't see a whole lot of fuel stations. I'm not from here, so I don't know the area, significantly. But Walmart is, pretty excited to put in a fuel station and grow the economy in this area for that reason. So that's the request for the height difference of what is there. So currently that sign, I believe, is 25 foot. I can't remember. Currently, that was the previous zoning ordinance, so we're not really requesting a whole lot of additional. The sign is bigger on top. That's just the new Walmart standard is 5 by 20. I mean, that's just their proto that they've moved forward with for all sites that they're working on. Square footage, basically, I know the sign up top is bigger, but the additional is basically the fuel readers that's under it. Those fuel readers are 3-foot digits for visibility for traffic that's traveling along that parkway. It's a pretty moving road, so they wanted visibility for people to see that prior to the stoplight that's at that intersection. So that's the additional basic square footage. Is majority of that is with the fuel reader portion of that sign. It will still be on Walmart's lot. We propose to remove that one, and it will shift closer to the store side of it because the fuel station basically is going to be encompassing where the existing road sign is currently at. So we will move that still on Walmart's property, still same distance from right-of-ways. We're not proposing to move it any closer to the road. We're just asking for the additional 6 feet in height. And then the additional is the square footage. We know most of the square footage is with the building, and we're not changing anything on the building as far as the signage. Everything will stay the same. The square footage of the road sign and the fuel station has 4 sets of Walmart letters on the canopy, and the rest of the square footage is just the digital price readers. So that's all that in signage encompasses. There's nothing additional to that fuel station besides on the canopy. So. Thank you.
Your microphone, please.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Chad Spitznagel, City West Lafayette, AO. I'm talking more neutral on this than anything. I wanted to bring up a couple points. I think I had talked to Walmart a while ago and just said, hey, why don't you, if you made this a second lot and you still, keep your lot, with both frontage on Cumberland and US 52, you don't lose the 240 that Nathan referred to. Losing was a setback reduction and some other things. So if they had just created 2 lots, you still have frontage on Cumberland, you still have frontage on Sagamore, and you basically get another 200 square feet of sign area for the lot, and everything for the 400 for Walmart stays the same, and you're roughly in that 600 square foot thing, to be specific. So I guess I'm bringing it up more because I've examined sign permits in 2023, 2019, 2017. I didn't do the 2011 and the 2005. So I think, when they come and change or rebrand in 2 years, from a permit perspective, it's much easier when they have this, nice size requirement, and then you can, any of us can probably go look at the sign area calculation and come up with a slightly different sign area. So no issues with it on our end, but happy to answer any questions and respect whichever way you go.
Thank you, Chad. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition? Questions, comments from the board?
And I don't know if this is for staff, they talked about the previous signage was under different ordinance, which was larger. I don't know if you have those calculations handy or not. If it would make the increase look smaller.
I don't have the standards from the previous ordinance. Maybe Chad can
Sounds like
speak.
Chad may have some information for you. Thank you.
Chad Spitznogle, for my 2017 review, I think I had asked Walmart to give me all the existing sign area, so I never had that exact, original Uzo sign area, but I had used all the sign area when they came in from that existing permit in 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Robert?
I have a few questions for petitioner. The fuel sign, is that a double-sided sign?
Yes. So there's units on facing north, I guess it would be north and south, yes.
In the calculations, staff, do we count each side of the sign as square foot?
No, if it were like this, we would, where you could see both faces from the same perspective, but not when they're in that orientation.
Okay. When you mention that the Walmart at the top will be larger,
Yes, so it's currently, I don't know
It's
the
like
current,
36 square feet roughly, maybe a little less than
like
that.
maybe, I think it's like a 3 by 12 maybe. And they're proposing to go to a 5 by 20. So that's the 100 square feet, and then the 52 square feet is the fuel signage
for your
portion.
overall sign package, you want more square foot for better visibility, is that correct?
Correct.
But you're not willing to give up the sign that apparently no one can see on the building. So you could decrease that sign because apparently no one can see it from the street and use it up front,
Correct.
but you're not willing to put that into the application.
Walmart is not, correct.
The height of the sign, I know that you weren't here at the other time, but it was suggested by a couple different agencies and individuals to move the location of the station to a different part of the lot, which if they would have did that, they wouldn't have been down in the valley. So the extra height on the sign itself, I think, is almost self-imposed because that's where you wanted the station, in a bad spot versus in the other part of the parking lot where it would have been higher up.
Okay.
Also, during that time, the representative, I specifically asked him, did they have a sign package for this? He said no, but also stated that they were, because I go, well, I've never heard of a gas station without signage. He said that they were going to, because it's considered all one property, they were going to go ahead and use the signage from the original building. But now we have a different situation again. How do you justify coming back and asking for, well, actually changing the idea and asking for more signage?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, this project was brought on just this past fall with our company. So if they used a previous company, that wasn't brought to our attention on that part. So I'm here on behalf of them based off of what was submitted to me in the fall, proposing the fuel station. Now, I've worked with Chad on the previous sign package for the building, so I was with the company at that time, but for any other reference as far as fuel station proposals or road sign movements or anything of that nature, I have not been aware of or brought to my attention by Walmart or Walmart staffing on that measure. Did that answer the question? Sorry.
Well, I appreciate your honesty and your forthright. It just feels like with this proposal, things keep on changing on us, and there again, more signage. Every time we're coming, we're asking for more signage. I really have a tough time seeing why they wouldn't go ahead and agree to decrease the building signage, which is apparently isn't effective because you want a larger street sign. If the public gets into that lot, I think that they know where they're at by that time.
Right.
So to go ahead and keep all the signage there, I think is just an unreasonable request. And then the height part, if it would have been relocated, we wouldn't have this issue either. But thank you very much for your
You're
response.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Comments?
Gary, comments? Yeah?
Okay. I think Robert makes some good points. However, Walmart, that's a very large site, like Robert said. You can't see the sign. It's so far away from the road. Necessary, not necessary, but maybe people want to know where the doors are. But, I mean, there's just a lot of things, meaning the previous ordinance. I think Walmart's been pretty modest on their signs, as large as they are. They just had a pretty small sign out there, but, and I think having the gas prices up there is important for people to see. Like you said, people know where they're going, but I agree with Chad that, you know, this is not, as large as that site is, as much as there is going on there, I don't think that this is a big issue, and I'll support the request.
I think also the fact that Chad brought up that if you were to subdivide it, you would have more signage. You could probably actually have 2 pylon signs as
Yeah, it's
well.
just more of a technicality.
It's
than-
more of a technicality.
work
2
around it.
uses on the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they're related, but they're,
But Steve, subdividing,
Yeah.
they would have ran into problems with parking. They
Yeah.
wouldn't have had, the reason why they kept it all as one is
Is
to
to
get it through with
keep
the
the
parking. If they would have subdivided.
Share parking.
They wouldn't be here because they wouldn't have enough parking.
that's true. Any other questions or comments? If not, we've got 3 ballots.
All right, on variance number 1, there were 6 ballots cast, and we have 5 yes, 1 no on variance number 1. On variance number 2, we have 6 ballots cast and 5 yes, 1 no, and that is variance number 2. Variance number 3. We have 6 ballots cast. We have 6 yes, 1 no. That's variance number 3.
5 yes, 1 no.
What did I say?
It's at 6
I
yes.
apologize. It's 5 yes, 1 no on variance number 3.
All 3 variances are granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2221, Thomas Developers LLC. Petitioner and owner, represented by Ryan Munden of RTS Law, requests the following variances to allow construction of a multifamily apartment building. 1, to increase the building height from the maximum allowed 14 feet measured to the floor of the uppermost finished story to 24 3/4 feet, UZO 2-12-11. Number 2, to reduce the number of parking spaces from the required 13 spaces to 2 spaces, UZO 4-6-4. Number 3, to decrease the lot width from the maximum required 70 feet to 37 feet 4 inches, UZO 2-12-6. Number 4, to reduce the lot area from the minimum allowed 7,900 square feet to 4,863 square feet, UZO 2-12-5. The R4W zone property is the south half of Lot 8 of NNEC Pierce's addition, more commonly known as 226 South Grant Street, West Lafayette, Wabash 19, Southeast 23-4.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. Yes, the petitioner is requesting these for variances to construct a 6-unit, 10-bedroom multifamily apartment. This R4 piece of property was rezoned in January of this year from R3W to R4W. The existing house was originally constructed as a single-family house and then around the 1930s. It currently has 5 units according to the assessor's record. There's no record, we could find no record that shows when this was converted into a multifamily structure. This block contains multiple buildings in the same situation, older homes that were converted into multi-structures. The property to the north, as you can see here, is the same situation. The property or building to the east is a multifamily structure, 2-story multifamily structure. This lot's frontage is along Grant Street here. The proposal shows that they will have a pedestrian access off of Grant Street, and their primary vehicular access would be off of an existing alley that services most of the properties along this block. Averaging along Grant Street allows the building to be set at the 12-foot. The property owner, petitioner, has positioned his house to meet that requirement to maximize the area in the back. Parking in this R4W is based on the unit count and the unit size. With the proposed unit count and unit sizes in this development, 13 parking spaces would be required. The petitioner is proposing to raise this site. The new structure would be 3 stories tall and support 6 units with 10 bedrooms. All parking would be to the rear, as we can see here. The petitioner is showing 2 spots, 1 handicap, 1 normal spot, and then 6. And then they're showing the vehicle or bicycle parking in the rear. If approved, this density will allow, or this development will allow for a density that's a little bit more dense than would be required by right. For example, this site could support 3 Type B units based off the lot size. So there are 4 variances being requested, 2 for height one for height and one for lot width. Staff is supporting these two variances. Staff is supporting the lot width variance because regardless of the use, this lot would require a lot width variance even for a single-family house to be located on it. And the lot width will never change no matter what gets built. Staff is recommending in favor of the height request because we are currently in the process of working with West Lafayette to increase the allowance in the R4W to 40 feet. And this development will meet that 40 feet in height at the top of the building. Staff is recommending against the parking variance and the lot size variance, even though the lot size variance the lot would not change itself. Reducing the number of units, potentially changing some of the development design could allow a certain number of units on the site by right. It's only their request to put additional units on that, additional, depending on the design, this requiring the lot size. And then the parking is kind of in the same situation. Potentially changing the design could potentially get more parking spaces on it. I don't know that it could get all the parking spaces, but because of that, staff is recommending against the parking and lot size requests.
Thank you. Petitioner is her representative.
Ryan Munden with RTS Law here on behalf of the petitioner. As Larry mentioned, in January, the West Lafayette City Council voted unanimously to rezone this property to R4W. During our presentation to City Council, we did explain to them the need for these variances. So knowing that we needed these variances, they still unanimously voted in favor of the rezone. This was intended as an alternative to the planned developments that West Lafayette typically sees for student housing. Regarding variances 1 and 3, we concur with staff's report and recommendation. With respect to variances 2 and 4, we concur with staff's report regarding ballot items 1 and 2. Regarding ballot items 3, 4, and 5, the argument is essentially the same for all of them. This is a neighborhood that was originally intended for single-family homes. The lots are sized for such. However, the entire neighborhood is zoned for apartments. As staff mentioned in their report, this part of West Lafayette, and I quote, "This part of West Lafayette has very few remnants of the single-family neighborhood that once was located here. Today, the original homes have either been replaced with apartment buildings or converted to apartments. This is clearly a prime location for denser student housing," end quote. Again, therefore, we have a bunch of very small lots, but no sized for single-family homes, but no single-family homes. So our options to build apartments here are to either do a planned development like we've done a ton of in West Lafayette, or the alternative, like as we're doing here, is to do a rezone with a handful of variances. This project could go much larger if we went the PD route. It likely involves acquiring neighboring lots and doing a huge project. The purpose of going smaller here is that it is an alternative to the hyper-expensive units that we see in the bigger developments. West Lafayette was also comfortable pursuing this project as a rezone with variances, provided that we do a density cap commitment, which we agreed to cap at 6 units, and we've provided that to City Council. As I mentioned, student housing projects in West Lafayette are typically planned developments. The biggest criticism we get at City Council when we argue in favor of these planned developments is that they're way too expensive and not affordable for the average student. Affordability is a legitimate concern for West Lafayette, and that is the purpose in doing a project on this scale rather than the larger scale that we would typically do. Those projects are fine, there's a place for them, but not every project needs to be that way. And then finally, with respect to parking specifically, again, if we do a planned development, we don't have to comply with any of these lot standards, and the parking ratio that we currently have is relatively consistent with what the planned developments see. In addition, we have access to off-site parking, excess parking just around the corner at another Tomish development. So to the extent there would be a need for additional parking here, we do have access to off-site parking. However, since this is campus adjacent, parking is not as necessary. 13 spots certainly are not necessary because of walkability of the area for class and restaurants, et cetera. So with that, we respectfully request your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition?
5 minutes. I'm John Burgett, 510 Main Street, Lafayette. I think we probably should take some time and wish your attorney happy birthday. He turned 69 a week ago. 5 minutes, I know, I'll be quick. I started practicing law when he was 6 years old. I've been doing it 63 years. Eric, he's using my time up. The Burgett family has housed companies and so forth. We've housed several hundred students a year for probably not 48 years, but we've been in the business 48 years, and I've been involved with it for that period of time. And I'm not going to speak to 222 or 2222, but I would like for you to consider the fact that we are in a situation now where we have never before seen vacancies in properties. We have several vacancies this year. I have no idea what's going to happen. The appraisers are looking at their figures and downsizing figures appraisals on units like this. I'm concerned about utilities. Where are we going to get the water? We've got a new data center down in Lebanon, the LEAP project, and they'll be back for another 100 million gallons of water pretty soon. We've got a chip factory that's going to use 4 million gallons a day, maybe, if that's true. We need to start thinking about density here, I think, and I'm not so sure that with having vacancies, and I've got clients that have experienced vacancies too, of all kinds, and we see the students fleeing the high-rise apartments because of the prices, but we still have vacancies in apartment buildings. We've got an apartment building which is about, not a quarter of a mile. It's up on Pierce Street, probably a block and a half from where this property is and where the other property on 2222 is. We've got 5 or 6 vacancies for this past year in 2 buildings. I hear from clients that have pre-approval to build large units in West Lafayette, already approved, that are doing second thoughts about that and saying, well, it probably ain't going to happen because of the vacancy problem and the current situation here. And maybe there'll be a time in the future where the properties like this can be filled, but I think that this is something that needs to be considered when you decide what you're going to do. Parking's obviously a problem. We have people parking in parking lots at parking buildings that we have that don't belong there, and it's kind of a dirty trick to have them towed away, but sometimes you have to do it because there will be 10 or 15 cars that will come in there that don't belong in a parking lot. And if they want to reduce parking in this, you know, what are the students going to do? They're not going to go a block and a half away to park their car and then walk in the dead of winter. That's what I've got, and I think that you need to start thinking about density. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Sir, could you sign in at the staff desk, please?
Sir.
Could you sign in at the staff desk? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Hearing none, Ryan, you have an opportunity to rebut.
As you can see from the picture that we did have up, this building is essentially at its end of life, and it's in need of repairs. Go back. So that's what we have here, is an old building that something needs to be done with. And like I said before, the alternative is something much, much larger than what we're proposing. Our parking is consistent with what planned developments have provided for. Had we gone that route, that is based on the city's comfort level with those ratios. With respect to vacancies, if you're looking to pay $2,000 or $3,000 a month in rent, then of course, let's not build any more apartments. Building more apartments and vacancies are good for people that are trying to rent in West Lafayette. Affordability is a problem. Things like we're proposing help solve that. So if we don't want affordability, then by all means, deny the request. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? Robert?
Can we please go back to the site plan? Can you help me out? So I could see the handicap spot, then there's the driveway. Where's the second parking spot?
Larry's going to help us out with that one.
It's immediately south of the ADA spot, right there.
Here's the normal parking spot, here's the handicap.
And so the 25 feet behind that is just like a driveway.
Correct.
What about just to the, is, like there's two squares over there? What is that?
Trash and electric.
Trash and
Barry is with KJG is here with us as well to help answer questions.
What is the area that is just north of the handicapped? I mean, is that part of the handicap
The
spot?
hashed mark,
That's the accessible portion, okay.
correct?
Okay. Staff, planned development, is it usually 2 parking spots for 6 units? Is that sound?
Well, there's, each project's negotiated individually, and so we'll sometimes look at previous projects and, consider a similar ratio. Sometimes we've learned from the past and we've altered our ratios per projects. So, Ryan's not incorrect about mentioning generally what other projects are, where they are. There is sort of a floating range in this very core area that a lot of the newer projects from the last 5+ years are kind of floating around in. In terms of that exact number, I'd have to verify that. I couldn't confirm that for you, what you asked.
Okay. I know my opinion, but in this area, would you say that this is a high density, lot of density in that area and also a lot of parking traffic?
In terms of density, it is a very busy place and it is intensifying for sure. That's very clear. Residential densities have increased. I believe the 2020 West Lafayette Downtown Plan, which I believe this area is outside of that. Yeah. It will be included in the expansion and the second amendment that's in draft form. But in terms of current policy, it was sort of hinted at, a potential parking solution for this part of town would be, city could expand its permit parking program on the street instead of all the 2-hour spaces that are everywhere that are usually abused by Purdue staff.
Do situations like this put a lot more pressure on the neighborhood in general? Because 2 spots for 6 units, even if you say a couple of them are going to walk, one of them is a handicap spot, so no one can, unless you're approved to use that. So there could potentially be 1 spot for 6 units. Then I would think it would add pressure on the rest of the neighborhood because these people have to, if they have visitors, if they have deliveries, if they have everything else, they're not providing for any of that. Do you find that in layouts like this also, that if you don't have more parking, it puts pressure on the whole neighborhood?
Well, it certainly can, but I think in terms of policy over the years for this part of town, and especially kind of moving north closer to the core areas, there's been deliberate desire to try to make the most of this near-campus neighborhood and sort of incentivize walkability, by necessarily reducing parking for those that aren't bringing a car. When I first got here 17 years ago, there was a ratio of 1 space per bedroom that was essentially gospel, and it was very clear that places were getting overparked. And so through a steady succession of planned developments, we've started to experiment with lowering ratios. And then testing the waters, seeing are these projects functioning, more properly, and ostensibly building, purpose-built projects that aren't auto-centric, in that there aren't spaces for everybody. With the implication being that, we're comfortable as a city, and this is a matter of policy that council's free to, switch if they like, that, if you want to bring your car to campus, this part of town may not be for you. There may not be a place for you. If your car is, you must have it, then, maybe the more suburban locations that have more plentiful parking might be more suitable. But for those that want to live really close in, or are captive transit riders, we felt that we didn't need to impose higher parking ratios in these areas. That's what went into our negotiations, project by project by project. So, with the planned developments.
But even with situations like this, you would still have, even if the occupant student, presumably student, may or may not have a car, there would still be the possibility that they would have parents visiting, people visiting, things delivered. Even with that, they're going to have to take the trash out the back of the alley.
Sure.
They did have the pad there.
Yeah, we're treating it as an urban core area, and where the car doesn't necessarily dominate or is fully accommodated. Sometimes parents have to pick their kid up on the curb and then they go off to visit, or the city addresses a potential problem by, saying, hey, maybe we need a different, on-street parking program. Maybe we need some off-site public parking areas that the public can make use of, because we're seeing a need. And so, those are things that have been raised in our kind of comprehensive plans in this area for the city to consider as they continue to grow and get more sophisticated. We even raised the specter of a joint parking authority with Lafayette, and, try to pool resources, that sort of thing. So,
Thank you.
sure.
I'd like to see if Chad has any comments on the development.
Chad Spitznagel, Housing Director, AO. Ryan actually, he hit exactly what I was going to say, otherwise it would have came up, too. But I think when this was vetted at City Council, valid question, because we spent the same amount of time, talking about it at City Council, and I think the cross-parking agreement that Ryan, hinted to was the deciding factor, because the next one that you're going to hear, in just a few minutes has, four beds and 4 parking spaces. So, they could, having the same owner, they've got some options within the same block to have some parking alternatives and cross-parking agreements.
Thank you. I guess question for petitioner. I'm assuming that these parking spots will be permitted so that if it's not a free-for-all, that you're not going to allow more cars.
Correct, they'll be assigned by the unit. So you either have a unit with a parking spot or you don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you won't give the impression that you can bring a car, but then you've got to find a spot for it.
Correct.
That you're going to actually have one unit that has that parking spot And then if there's a handicap, that they will have the opportunity to use that.
Correct. And back to the
Additional.
affordability issue is the apartments with no assigned parking would obviously not be as expensive as an apartment with parking, so.
Was there any, was there any possibility of looking at the lot to the north of it, as far as just a slightly bigger project that might have a little bit more parking, or is that something that was just completely off the table?
That's not our property, so
I know it's
I
not
don't
your
even know
property,
if
but
they're
it's-
sellers, so, yeah.
There's
And
no
again, there's that-
effort to look into it since
Yeah,
it's
and
a
then there's
different
that
property.
domino effect of, all right, we buy that one, and then let's go for the one north of it, and then the one north of it, and then we have the Sullivan again, which is an entire
Right.
city block.
Just that that is actually half a lot, where you have the north half is, the other half of the lot, where you'd have a full lot rather than just a half lot.
But again, back to our
Yeah.
argument, we're
I
left
know,
with,
yeah.
our lot that we do have control over is the size that it is. And it's
Exactly.
zoned for apartments. It was zoned for apartments before we rezoned it. And it's an extremely small lot, so it's a unique situation where we can either do it this way, we can do a planned development, or we're essentially left with a piece of property we can't do anything with, in a building that's beyond its lifespan, and it's basically let it sit there. Mr. Burgett would be happy that it would just sit vacant, so.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just to follow up on what Robert said, and we've talked about that before, parking. I just don't want to be a community that doesn't have any parking like other communities. Two spots for 10 units, I mean, that's, I guess you'd say that's 20%, and I've seen on PDs maybe in the 33%, so.
I thought it was 6 units. Is that
6
10
units.
Is it 10 bedrooms and
10.
6 units, or is it 10 units?
6 units, 10 beds. So I typically look at beds when you look at parking. So if it's not 10,
I don't know
please
if I'm
let me
correct
know.
or not, I'm just. That's
That is
right.
correct, yeah.
Yep, it's 10 beds. So I guess you're only really one spot short, and I assume they've looked at that as hard as they can to see if they can't squeeze another spot in there. So interesting. Thank you.
Allow any redirect?
Couple comments over with, sorry.
Ryan, I've got a question for you, if you could. Regarding the overflow parking at the other Tomish property, are these spots going to be reserved for this property? Or is it, if they're available, then people with cars will be able to use those spots? Or will some be reserved?
We will set aside parking as necessary to serve this. So if there's somebody that has a car that needs a parking space, it would be made available on the other project.
Right. And then on that other project, is that also an apartment complex?
It's an apartment building, yes.
Okay.
It is going to include some garage spaces. As a result, we're higher, which then kicks us into needing other variances. So, I mean, we have to, every time you tweak one thing, you create another problem, and solve that problem, you create another problem.
Yeah.
That lot is slightly larger, that allows slightly larger or taller building, more parking.
Okay. Do you happen to know the ratio of beds or bedrooms to parking spaces at that building? I'm just thinking out of curiosity.
And just an FYI, that's the next case we're going to hear.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
24 beds, 24 spaces.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we've got 4 ballots.
Thank you.
Need somebody else to choose them too, right?
No, shouldn't be. Just the one. Come on. Gotta have, hit the check. All right. For variance number one, we have 6 ballots cast. That is 6 yeses and 0 nos for variance number one. Variance number two, we have 6 ballots cast, and that is 5 yes votes and 1 no vote, and that's variance number two. Variance number three, we have 6 ballots cast, 6 yes, 0 no, and that is variance number three. Variance number four, we have 6 ballots cast, 6 yes, 0 no's. That is variance number four.
All 4 variances have been granted, and we'll hear our last case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2222 Thomas Developers LLC. Petitioner and owner, represented by Ryan Munden of RTS Law, requests the following variances to allow construction of a multifamily apartment building. Number 1, to increase the building height from the maximum allowed 14 feet measured to the floor of the uppermost finished story to 26 feet 5 9/16 inch, UZO 2-12-11. Number 2, to reduce a rear north setback from the minimum allowed 25 feet to 13 feet 5 inches, UZO 2-12-8. Number 3, to decrease the lot width from the minimum required 70 feet to 63 feet 8 inches, UZO 2-12-6. Number 4, to increase the building coverage ratio from the maximum allowed 40% to 58.4%, UZO 2-12-7. The R4W zone property is Lot 15 of the N and CE Pierce Edition, more commonly known as 230 Harrison Street, West Lafayette, Wabash 19, Southeast 23-4.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please. Ryan?
All right, well, stop me if you've heard this one. So we've got a bit of a repeat. With our previous case, we have another site located not too far away. Like, again, multifamily zoning and plan development zoning surround the site. Here's a look at the closer in. The existing home, 5-unit converted house, goes back to 1910, so even further back. This is going to be, this area will be included in the expansion of the West Lafayette downtown plan, but that is not yet adopted. So the original plan is, does leave this area out in terms of land use recommendations. The parking standard for the type A units is 3 spaces per unit, and the site plan shows 24 spaces provided. And as you'll see in the site plan, that's within covered garages and covered, essentially tandem spaces behind them. So this, obviously, this total would be more than the 18 required per the ordinance. Of course, utilities are available to serve the site. We'll go ahead and get a little perspective shot of the current situation. We can go back to any of these if there's interest. And here's the site plan. In terms of the tests, staff does kind of split them out a little bit here. Our opinion, request number 1 on height, number 2 on the rear setback, and number 4 on the lot coverage. On 1 and 4, we do not see any injurious situation occurring with the public. Regarding variance 1, the increased height, again, is not an issue for reasons that were explained in the previous case regarding the height changes that are coming. And then, but for 2, staff did feel a little bit concerned with the building separation. We kind of just wanted to be on record with that. That obviously is the purview of the fire department, but we'll just kind of leave it at that. In terms of use and value, requests 1, 2, and 4 will not be impacted in this negative way. Variance 1, similar situation. We don't see any issues there. In terms of the zoning ordinance being applied to, variance 1, 2, and 4, situation is common to properties in the same zoning district and in the same neighborhood. As we just saw with the previous case, there are more than a few of these small old platted lots. And our opinion on 1, 2, and 4, strict application of the ZO will not result in unusual or unnecessary hardship. Obviously, development standards could be shifted to try to fit the regime. So we believe that the hardship is self-imposed on these 3, 1, 2, and 4, and that the variances sought do not provide that minimum relief. Relative to 3, the lot width, granting variance request number 3 will not be injurious to public health, safety, welfare. Nor do we believe that the properties adjacent will be impacted in an adverse manner as a result of this particular request. And this situation is not common to other properties in the same zoning district. While there are some, it is not common that we have lots this small. It is somewhat unique with this area, and then not all of them are applied equally that way, so we do see some uniqueness there. And so we do see unusual, unnecessary hardship being imposed as a result of that. And so therefore, we do find that the hardship is warranted. And so our final requests are denial for 1, 2, and 4, and approval for 3. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Petitioner's representative, Ryan.
Again, Ryan Munnin with RTS Law here for petitioner. As was the case with the last one, in January, West Lafayette City Council voted unanimously to rezone this property to R4W. At that meeting, we presented these variances to them so they were aware that they would be needed when they voted unanimously to approve it. Regarding variance number 3, we concur with staff's report and recommendation. Regarding variances 1, 2, and 4, our position is the same as in the previous case, so I'm not going to repeat everything that I've already said, but to summarize, the situation is unique because we have a lot sized only for single-family home among apartments. The alternative is to do the planned development, which ultimately renders apartments more expensive, or we do a smaller project like this with the rezone and the variances. West Lafayette also required that we submit a density cap commitment for this project, which we did. Regarding height specifically, if this project were heard potentially a month later, we would be, I'm going to use inches because it sounds better, but we're 12 inches higher than what would be the new standard. So we're at or very close to what has been deemed a reasonable standard moving forward. And regarding the north rear setback, if it was possible to reorient the building, maybe reorient is not a right term, but if the alley were considered the front of the building, we would only be required to have a 6-foot setback on the side. So I'm not entirely clear what the concern is with only 20 feet between structures when we could be much closer to the neighboring building if we're dealing with a side setback as opposed to a rear setback. And as I mentioned previously, Barry with KJG is with me this evening, and during Ryan's presentation, we were talking, and it would be possible if the concern is fire spreading from building to fire rate that side of the building, to address that concern if that's the concern. So with that, we request your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition? Comments, questions from the board? Can you go back to the slide that shows, what the issue would be with the potential rear setback, what's the closest structure currently? So there is, but it looks like there's a fairly distant distance, except for the corner of the caddy corner building. Right. I guess for the petitioner, the parking is tandem, so that there's one car behind the other. Is there any, just to explain how that works as far as how does somebody get out if they're trapped?
Typically, the tandem units would be with roommates, so that you would live with the person you have to coordinate with to get in and out. So it's not a perfect solution, but it allows more parking.
Thank you. Robert?
Is it because it's in the alley that basically the driveway is going to be the whole length of the building? Is it because if it's in the alley, there's no limitation to driveway size, or, there's not a sidewalk, so you could drive wherever you...
No, there wouldn't be a standard for a driveway length in this type of situation. Because it is an alley, yeah.
But for the covered drive, for all of the ones there, the covered driveways, and if you're coming from the alley, that whole thing is going to be open to drive across? Like on the other side, there was the parking lot, and you had that berm with park stops.
Do you have a west elevation, or, yeah, there we go.
So essentially, the alley would open up into the garages. There'd be that 6 foot of asphalt between the...
Right, the south elevation there kind of shows how it would look from the street. So that kind of brick portion there in the lower left, that would be the covered portion, right, architect?
The building is on top of those covered parking spaces.
Right, so the west elevation, it's basically going to be a driveway from the left to the right side off the alley.
Well, it's, if we go back to plan view, the driveway width is about 6 feet off the building wall, right?
There you go.
To the alley right away. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So that would be open to the air.
You can't park cars there, but you could...
It's essentially one big long curb cut.
Yeah.
Onto an alley, yeah.
I guess Ryan also...
Did that answer your question, sir?
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Is the height, the foot above, is that because of just the height of the building, or the the width of the building and the slope of the roof?
Yes, that
That's
would,
required?
correct.
Okay.
And our previous height standards were measured differently. So currently, we're measuring to the finished floor as
Right.
opposed to the peak, which we would be next month potentially.
And so this is actually would be a foot above the actual peak, not or the peak would be a foot above what the new standard is, according to the new ordinance, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we've got 4 ballots.
On variance number 1, we have 6 ballots cast, 6 in favor, 0 against. That's number 1 variance. Number 2 variance, we have 6 ballots cast, 5 yes, 1 no. That is variance number 2. Variance number 3, 6 ballots cast. We have 5 yes, 0 no's, and that is variance number 3.
That'd be 6 yes.
Goodness gracious, 6. Yeah, thanks. And on the 4th variance, we also have 6 ballots cast, and we have 6 yes, 0 no's on variance number 4.
All 4 variances are granted. Administrative matters.
We do have a 5-minute planning
Planning.
pointer. if there's interest.
Any objections? Go ahead.
All right, Nathan will take it from here.
Thank you.
And it's on parking.
Yes, a much talked about issue tonight. This isn't going to cover everything about parking, and it's not going to solve all the parking issues, but at least it's an introduction to talking about parking through the planning pointer things that we've got going on. So this board has heard APC staff argue for fewer parking spaces and any number of variances throughout the years. But what is the right number? Are there situations when the ordinance actually allows fewer spaces? The answer to the first question is a little more difficult to provide and is largely situational. The second answer is a resounding yes, the ordinance does allow in certain situations. UZO Chapter 4-6-11 is titled Exclusions, Reductions, and Exceptions for Parking. There are 4 ways in which the ordinance currently allows specific uses to provide less parking than what is required in 463. And I'll just kind of go through each of these 4 instances, and I have an example for one. In the CB zone, the central business zone, except for hotels, motels, newly constructed residential buildings, and places of public assembly, like a movie theater, the off-street parking spaces specified in the parking table are not required. If they're provided anyway, they still have to conform to the design standards from 4-6-15. Those are the design standards for the spaces themselves. In the NBU zones, the urban neighborhood business zones, any non-residential use is limited to no more than 60% of the required parking spaces. An example of reduced parking spaces is the situation right here, if anybody's familiar with the Pickle. We're in the Lincoln neighborhood of the city of Lafayette on the near north side at North 10th and Union. They would be required to provide 1 space per 100 square feet of gross floor area in any other zoning district. With a building footprint of approximately 1,700 square feet, they'd be required to provide 17 parking spaces. I live half a block from this, so I'm familiar with this building. They have 10 parking spaces, which pretty much hits that 60% right on the nose. And you can see kind of some of the cars that are parked in those spaces. It is a pretty tight lot. The third instance when parking standards may be altered is during the plan development process, and we've talked about this extensively here and in other places, where everything, including parking spaces, is negotiated. In these cases, APC works with jurisdictions and the developer to ensure the project has the Goldilocks number of spaces. Some recent examples from West Lafayette include the Sullivan at 179, 179 parking spaces for 285 units, so that's a 0.63 space per unit ratio. The Standard, which is right next to the former Chauncey Hill Mall site, has 212 parking spaces for 254 units, so that's 0.83 spaces per unit. And the Rise, which is across the street from there where the bar on the corner, I can't remember what it's called, is 121 spaces for 289 units, so that's just under half a space per unit. Again, all of these planned development projects typically occur in the urban core, so that's where we like to see parking reductions and something that's more pedestrian oriented. The fourth and final time that on-site parking may be reduced is when an off-site parking agreement is used. And this is often done in conjunction with plan developments. Plan developments often have an off-site parking agreement that is negotiated. These are allowed for individual permitted uses other than single and two-family dwellings. There are specific requirements that must be met for these off-site parking agreements, such as having part of the parking area within 300 feet of the site, so that it will adequately serve the use for which it is intended. So you can't have those spaces reserved on the opposite side of the city or over the river. Off-site parking for commercial or industrial uses shall only be within commercial or industrial zones. There cannot be any off-site parking in a residential zone unless it serves residential needs only. It can't serve commercial, residential, etc. The off-site parking agreement must be recorded in the office of the county recorder as well, so there's evidence of it and we can pull it up when it's needed. As you can see from these examples that I've mentioned and the one on the screen, there are times when we don't ask developers to install oodles and gobs of parking spaces, which invariably get reduced by variance requests. And it's also important to note that in almost each one of these cases, most of this happens in the urban cores of Lafayette and West Lafayette. That's where we like to see less parking and more people walking and biking. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
This whole parking issue is new to me. So. When it comes to the parking spots that you guys talk about, does the developer then have to go, because one thing is the handicap spots. And I apologize, I'm not sure who sets how many handicap spots, but if they go to 179 spots, is that plus handicap or from that 179? Then who determines how many handicap spots and what's left over? Because sometimes I think the number of available spots to the general public is a lot less, or could be a lot less than that.
So Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but ADA parking spaces, that's a federal mandate, and so that ratio cannot be reduced.
That's correct, yeah. It finds its way through the building code, and so usually the designer, the architect, has already kind of got that programmed in their mind based on the, disposition of the project, will equal how many spaces are needed. And then that's confirmed by, the permitting office, in this case, Chad's shop in West Lafayette, to confirm that ADA has been respected.
But there again, so then if it's a federal thing, they would take let's say 150 spots were approved. Then the ADA comes in and it comes off of that 150.
Correct. Yeah, so that total includes the ADA
Yeah,
spaces.
so if you want to parse it like, all right, here's the total and here's the actual, if you're not handicapped, that's another way of thinking it. And sometimes the parking calculations in the plans, I mean, they'll have it all laid out and have the grand total and then have the required amount of handicap, the number, and then is it located in the proper place in the building, for accessibility, that sort of thing.
It kind of on that point too, the case that we just heard where you've got 2 parking spots and one is mandated to be handicapped. I mean, it's almost like you're taking away an additional parking spot if you don't have anyone that's handicapped there because they're permitted parking anyway, so they're assigned to a specific unit or specific person. So if you don't have anyone that needs that handicap spot, then that remains vacant and is not used unless you've got a guest that comes in.
For a residential project, I think you can use it if there are if none of your tenants are handicapped and need the space, then it.
You need to be able to offer that to them.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Commercial side, a little different, because
Right.
you're getting the general public is coming in, so you have to have the spaces available.
So they could actually give that handicap spot to somebody in that unit, so there's really
In the
2
apartment building
in the
example,
apartment
yes.
complex.
Yeah,
So there really is 2 units, even though one is designated as a handicap.
right. They would just get in trouble if a handicapped, customer that was going to rent there was denied a
Right,
space.
exactly.
Right.
That makes sense. Appreciate the clarification there. Any other questions? Thank you, Nathan.
Well done.
Yep. And I do have a couple of quick things.
Please.
First, we had the 2 cases that were kind of related. I know we vote on them separately. I guess, I read the report, but I guess I didn't catch all the details. But it would have been nice to hear the last case first because of the, how the parking was, and then hear the second, as they, have some interrelated, potential parking there. Because if the second case was denied, then the first case couldn't have relied on the parking of the second case.
That makes sense. We've just always
it's-
normally
yeah.
hear the cases and the
In
number.
order, but, I mean, even
Right.
if they were on there, if I had,
Yeah, we could
if I had thought about it, I would have asked if we could have flipped the cases.
And, you know, you certainly would have that
So,
authority. yeah.
Right. And then I guess the second thing is Ryan and I were talking after the last ordinance committee meeting about about our bylaws and the 5-minute rule that's a minimum. And evidently it got taken out of the bylaws. It's still in the area plan bylaws, but it was, we believe, accidentally removed from our bylaws.
We believe it was
Yeah,
accidentally
we
removed.
believe it
yeah.
was accidentally. We're still following that. There's just no minimum right now so that we could lower it. And I know that ordinance committee is experimenting with a 3-minute rule possibility that may propagate to area plan if it works out. So I would,
That's right.
I'm proposing, and, with, Ryan, I think, agreeing that we do nothing now for it until area plan gets ironed out, if they're going to change the rule.
Yeah, I mean, Gary can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there was a desire on the APC's part to tackle this. Ordinance committee
Yeah, ordinance
was
committee was going
taking it
to.
up for the sake of time, because we're
Right.
going from 4:30 to 7 on a very controversial issue that could have a lot of folks. And I believe Larry Leverin suggested that we move to 3 minutes, at least in these instances.
Which is consistent with
Because
other
it's similar to what
legislative
city
bodies.
council does. And so I could hear some chatter like, well, why don't we do it for
Yeah.
all of them? Yeah, so I guess you're right, it might be considered an experiment for ordinance committee that might snowball into, well, maybe we
Right.
should do it for ABC. And then this board could have that discussion if they feel it's right for
Right.
them.
But for now, I mean, we'll keep it as 5 minutes, it's not in our bylaws.
Right, I
Is what
think
is
Steve
what
and
I
I kind of
proposed. Yeah.
couched it under, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, that, the board could determine at every meeting what the public
Right.
speaking terms are. Now, if they're in the bylaws, then you have to respect them or change your bylaws, but, is that right?
I agree.
Okay. So,
But unless anyone has an objection, I mean, I'm just, more for your information now that that's not currently in the bylaws. But we'll keep it at 5 minutes unless something changes with other bodies.
I
There
think
you
maybe
went.
you were at the meeting and heard our discussion, and part of the reason
Yeah.
is just be consistent
Right,
with the other
exactly.
bodies. It's changed to the plan commission where we don't read letters,
Right.
and it seems maybe that we get more speakers. I've always kind of liked the 5 minutes because it's a public hearing.
It is. We
However,
do have to let people speak, so.
However-
Public hearing.
I think after I go to the other meetings, I think most of those people can say what they need to say in 3 minutes, unless someone's making a presentation.
Right, and we can
prepared.
always grant, if it were to be a specific time, we can always grant more time to a specific person. We don't like doing that, but we could.
Yeah, for a
But,
prepared
for
presentation.
now, we'll just leave it alone, but I just thought, Ryan and I had the discussion after the ordinance committee that, hey, it's not in our bylaws anymore, and,
I had to go in the archives and find out what happened. So
exactly.
it was in 2023, the changes that were made
For the
with respect
letters.
to forms.
Or
We found
forms, yeah.
a cross-through version that was presented to BZA, and that little 5-minute thing was part of the cross-outs, and I was like, and then I read the minutes and everything else, it was never discussed or brought up. And I'm like, I bet you that was an error. I don't think David intended to do that. He just wanted
Right.
to change the forms.
Yeah.
I don't remember having a discussion about 5 minutes, no 5 minutes.
We didn't.
So I think it was an error, but you technically voted to
voted to
adopt those
change it.
versions.
Exactly.
So, anyway,
Then the other thing we need.
we
to
can
watch
change them if you like.
Is the repeats, especially when we get a big meeting like we
Yeah.
had a few months ago. And they kept repeating and repeating and repeating them. We called them on it and said they weren't. And it was obvious they were. We got to find a way to stop.
But people have a tendency now to write out their 5 minutes, and they just get up here and read it, and they're not able to parse what they've written, their letter essentially, for content that was already
But if there's
read.
interest by this board, we'll be happy to,
But I
dust
think
off the bylaws and propose an update, based
I
on
think
your
we
direction.
just leave it alone for now, and if,
That's fine.
if keep it to we'll keep it to 5 minutes that we have in our instructions. And then if it ever changes, or if we decide to add it back later, then if nothing happens at area plan and the other bodies.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Any other administrative matters? Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And we'll take the last motion.
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.